Hey guys, what's up? This is Diego here at Cinemageddon Reviews. So as I announced at the end of my Cyberpunk video, my first novel, Scales of the West, is available right now on Amazon for you all to enjoy. You can get it on Kindle, hardcover, and paperback formats. I'm really proud of how this book turned out, and the few folks who have read it already have come away with positive things to say. In particular, I want to give a shout out to Annalise from AnnaliseReads.com for her very detailed and in-depth review of the book. Thank you so much, Annalise. It really means the world to me how much you enjoyed my book. Now, I already talked about this book and my inspirations for it in a previous video, but today, as a special treat for all of you guys for supporting the channel and for supporting me, I want to give you guys a quick excerpt of one of my favorite chapters in the book. Now, obviously, this is not the whole chapter, and I will not be spoiling any other parts of the book here. You're going to have to get my book if you want to see where the story goes from here, but I do think that this is a pretty interesting part of the story, and one that I am very excited to share with you guys today. Now, for context, this part takes place in the middle of the story. This is being told from a first-person point of view in the form of a flashback sequence. That's all I'm going to say for now. Figure it out from there. Once again, thank you guys so much for supporting us here at Cinemageddon Reviews and for all the love Scales of the West has received so far. You guys are the best. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the wasteland. Nate, before you keep reading, just know that I'm really sorry. I wish I could speak these words to your face, but I guess I'm not strong enough to face you, to face myself. But you have to know about your mother, and you should know why you've never met Emma. When I started this book, it was to keep my anger from getting to me, but I have to forget that now. My men aren't here. My COs aren't here. I have no one but myself to hate. I only hope, whatever happens, that you can forgive me for what I did. It was June 11th, 1874, when I saw the truth. For 5 days, our offensive on the Comanches had slowed down, slower than ever before. In record time, we had lost 100 men. This wasn't the first time we had lost, but the turnaround we had seen was different this time. We thought it was dumb luck at first, but by the third straight loss, the generals had started whispering to each other. Suddenly, communication from the higher ranks was less and less. Planning took longer, with less men to spare. Me and what was left of my men spent a lot of time waiting for orders, sometimes for days. Something was changing. Calvin and I talked. He was tired of sulking over the bodies for days on end. He had seen enough. I remember the first thing he said to me that day. "Someone's got to do something." He was so angry that at first I didn't recognize his voice. It scared me a little to look back and find him talking the way he did that day. Calvin told me he had read new information from up north. The boys up there had said the Comanches were joining up with the Hopis and the Cherokees. The tribes had been displaced from other battles further north, and were seen fighting each other in the last few months. It was an alliance no one had seen before, and if we waited too long, we'd have no chance of turning things back in our favor. Every time I said we couldn't spare the men, he just kept screaming, "We have to do something." Finally, he managed to explain what the plan was. Myself, Calvin, and 3 others would hike up the mountain north of our camp, in the dead of night. It was a secluded camp with no soldiers, an easy target, but to the enemy, critical to winning the war. The oddest thing was when he said, they're worshipping some girl like a god. That's when I started thinking. This camp showed up on every enemy map we had found in the area. It had been scouted twice now. Calvin knew it was important. I was starting to get that feeling myself. But no soldiers? I couldn't make sense of it. Our commanding officers knew about this place, but by the way they worked it out, it was non-essential. General Dixon said, a camp with no soldiers is a waste of bullets. Calvin, though, he knew to take any chance we could. Time was running out after all. He'd never let me down before, so I joined him. And at nightfall, we grabbed our guns and left. Since we were going against orders, we couldn't take our rides with us. Hopping the fence and going on foot was our only option. The trip up the mountain was going to be hard, and there was a storm coming. On our way there, I thought about how far we had come. This year was my 8th with boots in the mud. When I left home, my sister Caroline said I'd make her proud. I still remember her face, wavy brown hair and a warm smile in the gold morning sunlight. She taught me how to tend fields when we were growing up. She said I made her smile, even on the saddest days. I still remember the last time I saw her. She had cried herself to sleep by the fire. I would have woken her up, but I knew how painful it was for her. I couldn't let her live through this, seeing me walk away from her. So I let her sleep. I like to think I kept her safe like that, hoping that when she woke up I'd already be back. Corny, I guess. A year later, I got a letter from a neighbor. She had passed out from the heat and never took her medicine. No one found her until a few days had passed. I felt so awful that I never said goodbye. Every time I thought of going home, I felt sick, so I never did. That letter broke something in me, and I clung to this war for dear life, many days hoping it would never end. The others were angry at what the war took from them. They lost something precious, a brother, a friend, their house. Pretty much all of the men had something like that to fight for, but Calvin was different too. He grew up at the edge of the wildlands, so he was used to living in fear. That was there his whole life, up until he enlisted. He said all the new grunts had a terrible first night at basic training, worried about this or that, but not Calvin. He said that was the first night he had ever felt safe. I think that's why he did so well and stayed so long. Somehow, being different together was what made us friends, but that all changed tonight. I remember everything so clearly. We made it to the mountain, walking uphill as the rain poured down. Wind, darkness, and mudslides slowed our climb, and all that rainwater in our eyes blinded us. Lucky for us, that horrible storm kept all the predators away, at least for the time being. When we reached the plateau, the storm was at its worst. In the darkness, we saw our target. Calvin was right. The whole camp was unguarded, unsuspected. Teepees were scattered around that we could barely see through the rain. A few of them glowed from little fires inside. The occasional shadow kept us back, but eventually we figured it'd be safe. I took a step forward and felt something under my boot. I looked down, and it was a little wooden doll, buried under the mud. That was when the first doubts came to me. But they were little ones. I still had a job to do. We readied our guns and moved inside, looking out for anyone seeing us. Calvin led the way to the big tent in the center of camp, where he figured we'd find the person we were after. The rain and wind helped keep our cover. As we got closer, thunder and lightning hit the sky. Some of the men got jumpy and almost blew our cover. Finally, we reached the big tent. We stacked up against the sides, keeping as quiet as we could. Calvin stood on one side of the tent, myself on the other. I cut a hole in the fabric with my knife and peeked inside, aiming through with my rifle. It was supposed to be one quick shot, then we'd leave. But then, I saw my target. She was laying under a blanket, peacefully asleep, kept warm and safe from the storm by the tent and the small embers of the fire she had built. She looked so beautiful, so happy, so safe. Then she turned up from her side, laying on her back, and there was a bump. And my arms felt heavy. My heart started beating fast and I couldn't breathe, like only once before, 7 years before. "Frank, take the shot," whispered Calvin. That's when I remembered what I had to do. But I couldn't keep my rifle steady. I couldn't keep my finger on the trigger. I didn't want to anymore, so I put it down. Calvin stared at me, angry like I had never seen. The words didn't come out, but for the first time I didn't recognize him, or myself for that matter. I saw the gun in my hand, and I saw what I was about to do, and I froze. All the anger I was used to when I pulled the trigger was gone, and all I felt was fear. Then the ground shook. We thought it was rocks giving way from the storm, but it kept happening, every few seconds growing stronger. Teepees left and right creaked from the impact. Rocks jumped off the ground again and again. Calvin's eyes turned away from me, to the darkest part of the woods. The men and I looked into the trees and saw nothing but black, hearing nothing but rain and wind. After a moment, the shaking stopped, and then a flash of lightning lit up the sky, showing us the monster stalking in the camp. A fearsome Rex towering above us.